The caller whispered my name before I ever introduced myself. Then she described the room she was hiding in. And 32 seconds later, I heard someone open the door behind her. I was alone in the station archive when it happened, listening to a reel recorded in 1985. My name is Nora Whitaker. I am 38 years old, and for the past 11 years, I have hosted the Midnight Shift at WPRK, a small talk radio station outside Pittsburgh. My job was mostly insomnia. Truck drivers, night nurses, divorced men calling from kitchens they no longer recognized. People said things after midnight they would never admit in daylight. I listened. I took notes. I asked careful questions. That was what I was good at. Listening until every detail settled into place. I never interrupted too early. That habit nearly killed me. The reel had arrived in a cardboard box 3 nights earlier. No return address. No letter. Just 6 quarter-inch tapes in cracked plastic cases. 5 were labeled with dates and program names. The 6th had one sentence written across it in faded blue ink: "Do not air." Our station manager, Malcolm Reed, told me to throw the box away. Malcolm was 62 and had worked at WPRK since he was a college intern. He had a crescent-shaped burn scar on his right hand, tapped his wedding ring against tables when he lied, and always smelled faintly of peppermint lozenges. He said old reels arrived all the time: former employees cleaning basements, dead sponsors' families clearing storage units, collectors hoping we would authenticate something valuable. Probably blank, he told me. Then he picked up the reel marked "Do Not AIR." His ring began tapping against the plastic case. Tick, tick, tick. That was the first thing I noticed. At the time, I gave it a harmless explanation. Malcolm hated clutter. The archive was full of it. I waited until he left. Then I kept the reel. At 1:43 in the morning, during a syndicated music block, I threaded it through the archive machine. The tape hiss came first, then a man's voice. "This is WPRK Engineering Test. October 17, 1985, Auxiliary Channel 6. The voice was calm, professional. There was a click, a burst of static. Then silence. I checked the reel box again. No date, no program title, just the warning, "Do not air." 9 seconds later, a woman came through the static. "Can anyone hear me?" Her voice was thin and breathless, as though she was speaking through fabric. The unidentified man answered. "State your location." "I don't know." "Are you injured?" "I don't think so." I leaned closer to the speaker. The woman's breathing fluttered in and out beneath a low electrical hum. There were other sounds, too. A clock, a distant train, something metallic scraping across concrete. Then she said, "My name is Ruth Calder." I stopped the tape. Ruth Calder had been missing since 1985. Her photograph still hung in the hallway of our county courthouse. 24 years old, dark hair, accounting clerk at a local steel distributor. She vanished after leaving work on October 17th. Her car was found beside an abandoned rail spur. No body, no suspects. The case had been reopened twice and closed twice. I knew the name because I had interviewed Ruth's younger sister on the 30th anniversary of her disappearance. I started the reel again. The man asked Ruth what she could see. "A red light over the door," she whispered. "A desk, filing cabinets, a calendar with a lake on it. Is anyone else there?" "No." Then something struck a wall near her. Ruth inhaled sharply. "He's coming back." "Who?" "The officer." I felt my fingers tighten around the grease pencil in my hand. The official case file never mentioned a police officer. The man on the recording said, "Ruth, listen carefully. Find the radio." "I'm using it." "No, another radio." "There should be one on the desk." A drawer opened. Papers shifted. I found it. "What frequency is displayed?" A pause. Then Ruth read 6 numbers. I wrote them down. The signal cracked. The woman began crying without making a sound. I could only hear it in the wet breaks between breaths. Then she said, "Nora, please don't let them erase this." My pencil stopped. The unidentified man answered as if he had not heard my name. "Ruth, who is coming?" The clock kept ticking. A train horn groaned somewhere far from the microphone. Then Ruth whispered, "He knows I copied the ledger." Footsteps approached. A key entered a lock. The door opened. Ruth said one final word. "Malcolm." The reel snapped into static. I sat motionless in the archive chair. The machine continued turning. The empty tape slapped softly against the reel. Once, twice, again, I listened to the recording 3 more times. Each time she said my name. Each time she said Malcolm. There were several Malcolms in the original investigation. A patrol officer named Malcolm Dyer, a railway foreman named Malcolm Cook, and our station manager, Malcolm Reed, who would have been 21 in 1985. I told myself that mattered. Then I reminded myself not to make the oldest investigative mistake. A familiar name was not proof. I examined the tape. The oxide was worn. The splices were old. There were no fresh cuts, no modern adhesive, no obvious sign that someone had fabricated the reel recently. At 2:18, I looked up the frequency Ruth had read. That was when the recording became impossible. WPRK had not been licensed to use that frequency in 1985. According to Federal Communications Commission records, the channel was assigned to us in 2000, when the station installed a digital studio transmitter link. 15 years after Ruth vanished. Yet the introductory voice had clearly said auxiliary channel 6. And the frequency Ruth read matched our current backup link exactly. At 2:31, I called Malcolm. He answered on the 5th ring. What happened? Not hello, not why are you calling, what happened? I found something in the archive. Silence. Then the faint click of a lozenge against his teeth. What did you find? An old engineering reel. His breathing changed. Only slightly. You played it? Yes. How much? All of it. Another pause. Then his voice settled into the tone he used when an advertiser threatened to leave. Nora, unplug the machine. Lock the archive. Bring the reel to my office. Why? Because old test recordings sometimes contain protected transmissions. Protected by whom? That isn't something we discuss over the phone. He arrived 12 minutes later. His shirt was buttoned unevenly. One shoe was untied. He stepped into the archive, saw the reel on the machine, and stopped. The scar on his hand had gone pale around the edges. Give it to me. I covered the reel with my palm. Who was Ruth talking to? Malcolm's ring tapped once against the metal shelf. She wasn't talking to anyone. I heard her. You heard an edited tape. The tape stock is old. That proves the tape is old, not the recording. She said your name? There were other Malcolms. He had reached the same defensive argument I had, too quickly. I watched him look at the machine, the reel box, and the open notebook beside my hand. He was counting what I had seen, what I had copied. You need to leave, he said. This is my shift. Your shift is over. It ends at 6. It ends now. I stood. He moved toward the reel. I took it first. For 1 second, neither of us spoke. Then Malcolm lowered his voice. Ruth Calder disappeared because she went looking for something she did not understand. That sounds like knowledge, not speculation. It's a warning. To me, his eyes moved toward the dark studio beyond the archive window. To anyone who thinks old secrets stay harmless because the people who made them are old. I slipped the reel into my shoulder bag. Malcolm did not try to stop me. That frightened me more than if he had. He simply said, "You have until tomorrow night to bring it back." Or what? The people who sent it will assume you made a copy. I did. That was a lie. His face told me it was the right one. I left through the employee entrance and drove straight to the home of Elias Grant. Elias had been WPRK's chief engineer from 1978 to 1996. He was 79 now and lived alone above a closed appliance shop. He had appeared on my show twice to explain number stations and Cold War radio interference. He distrusted digital equipment, kept paper schematics in labeled tubes, and answered every question as if it were being recorded by hostile attorneys. At 3:20 in the morning, he opened his door wearing trousers, a white undershirt, and an expression of complete unsurprise. "You played it," he said. I had not told him about the reel. He stepped aside. His apartment smelled of solder, coffee, and hot dust. I placed the tape on his kitchen table. "You know what this is." I know what it was used for. He did not touch it. Instead, he opened a cabinet and removed a portable spectrum scanner older than I was. "The frequency on the recording," I said. "It belonged to us in 2000. Officially." "What does that mean?" Elias turned the scanner's dial. "In the 80s, licensed frequencies were public." Anyone with a directory could monitor police dispatch, ambulance traffic, public works, so certain departments created unofficial channels. Encrypted, he gave a dry laugh. Encryption was expensive. Secrecy was cheaper. He explained that local police intelligence units sometimes borrowed inactive frequencies during overnight hours. Utility bands, industrial channels, broadcast sidebends, anything that looked dead on paper. They used them for surveillance operations that never appeared in formal logs, illegal wiretaps, political monitoring, union informants, internal investigations that bypassed warrants. The station was involved, one transmitter was. Who authorized it? I never saw an authorization, but you installed it. I maintained the equipment. That was my job. His right thumb rubbed a dark stain on the table, over and over. What happened to Ruth Calder? Elias looked toward the curtained window. She worked for Allegheny Industrial Supply. They billed the county for radio parts, surveillance vans, replacement antennas. Most of the equipment never existed. She found the invoices. She found the second ledger. The one she mentioned on the tape. He nodded. Ruth had copied account numbers tied to an off-book police surveillance unit. The money moved through contractors. The contractors donated to local campaigns. The unit monitored whoever threatened the arrangement. Journalists, union organizers, defense attorneys, even police officers. Ruth threatened to expose it? No, Elias said. That was the story they told themselves afterward. What did she actually do? She asked questions. That landed harder. Ruth had not been an activist. She had not stolen files to sell them. She had found billing discrepancies and believed they were accounting errors. She contacted the county auditor. The auditor contacted the police, and the police assigned someone to protect her. The officer's name was Malcolm Dyer. That seemed to solve it. The Malcolm on the tape was not my station manager. It was the patrol officer. My relief was physical. My shoulders lowered. The pressure behind my eyes eased. Then Elias said, Dyer was not the man who took her. I looked at him. Who did? He pointed to the reel. The voice at the beginning, play it. I threaded the tape through an old machine in his sitting room. The introductory voice returned. This is WPRK Engineering Test. October 17, 1985, Auxiliary Channel 6. Elias stopped it. Listen to the breath between test and the date. I played it again. There was a small intake of air, a soft whistle through the nose, familiar. I heard that breath every night before our station identification. Malcolm Reed had a slightly deviated septum. The man on the tape was Malcolm, not the officer. Our Malcolm, he had been an engineering assistant in 1985, young enough to be overlooked, trusted enough to operate the transmitter. He intercepted Ruth's call? I asked. No, Elias's thumb stopped rubbing the table. He answered it. The room seemed to narrow around the tape machine. Why would Ruth be transmitting on a secret police channel? Because Dyer gave her a radio. To help her escape, to make the unit reveal itself. That was the midpoint where everything I believed turned over. Ruth had not been a helpless victim who stumbled into a hidden room. She had agreed to help Officer Dyer expose the illegal surveillance network. The ledger was bait. The radio was evidence. Dyer planned to record whoever responded on the dead channel, but someone discovered the plan. Dyer was killed in a staged car accident that same night. Ruth vanished. And Malcolm Reed recorded her final transmission. He was helping them, I said. Elias shook his head. Not at first. On the night Ruth disappeared, Malcolm had been instructed to monitor the frequency and report any unauthorized traffic to his supervisor. When Ruth called, he answered. Then he realized she was trapped inside the county communications annex. He tried to guide her to another radio that could broadcast across multiple channels. If she transmitted the ledger details publicly, dozens of scanners would pick it up. That was why he asked her to find the desk radio. Then why did she say his name when the door opened? Because she recognized his voice. She knew him. Malcolm had met her before. He helped Dyer set up the radio. I rewound the final seconds. Footsteps, the lock, the door. Ruth saying, Malcolm. For years, anyone hearing that would assume Malcolm entered the room. But she may have been addressing him through the radio. A plea, a final acknowledgement. The actual killer had never been named. Who opened the door? Elias looked at the scanner. I don't know. That was the answer I expected. It was also a lie. His thumb had resumed rubbing the table. I asked him why the tape had been sent to the station now. He said he did not know. Another lie. I stood. Elias's gaze followed my bag. You should leave the reel. Malcolm said the same thing. Malcolm wants to destroy it. And you, I want to survive it. As I reached the door, Elias said, Nora, I turned. The frequency was never dead. What do you mean? The network still uses it. I drove back toward the station before dawn, not because Malcolm had ordered me to, because Elias had shown me the clock. WPRK's broadcast license renewal hearing was scheduled for the following evening. If the station lost its license, the frequency would be reassigned. According to Elias, that would force the old network to dismantle or relocate its equipment. The reel had been sent now because someone wanted the recording found before the channel disappeared. Or destroyed before anyone understood it. I checked my rearview mirror. A gray county utility van followed 3 cars behind me. It remained there through 4 turns. When I slowed, it slowed. When I entered the station lot, it continued past. The side panel read communications maintenance. The lettering looked fresh. The van itself did not. Inside the station, Malcolm's office was empty. His computer was gone, so were 2 framed photographs, a lockbox, and the peppermint jar from his desk. He had not come to recover the reel. He had come to leave. I entered the archive. The reel machine was still warm. Someone had used it after I left. On the floor beneath the editing desk, I found a narrow strip of tape, 3 inches long. The adhesive had fresh fingerprints pressed into it. I played the fragment. At first, there was only static, then Ruth's voice. The numbers are not accounts, they're badge numbers. The original reel did not contain that sentence. Someone had cut it out before the box reached me. The ledger had not traced money. It identified officers. I copied the fragment to 3 digital drives. Then I made the decision that nearly ended my life. I chose not to call the police. The entire mystery involved an underground police network. I needed complete certainty before I trusted anyone. I needed names, records, a chain of evidence no one could dismiss. So I returned to Elias's apartment alone. The door stood open. Inside, the coffee table had been overturned. A soldering iron burned against the carpet, Elias was slumped beside the radio cabinet, and a county utility technician stood near the curtained window. 3 things at once: fire, a body. A stranger holding Elias's scanner. The technician wore gray coveralls. One lens of his glasses was thicker than the other. He rolled a small metal nut across his knuckles, and his clothes carried the sharp smell of ozone. He looked ordinary enough to repair telephone lines. That was why no one noticed men like him entering secure buildings. "Where is the reel?" he asked. I stepped backward. He moved toward me, not quickly. He did not need to. The apartment door swung shut behind my shoulder. Elias made a wet sound from the floor. Alive. The technician glanced down. That was my only opening. I pulled the fire alarm mounted in the hallway. Nothing happened. The handle came away in my hand, disconnected. The technician smiled. "Mr. Grant calculated you would come back." His behavioral quirk was the nut, rolling across 4 fingers, catching against his thumb. Again, "I need an ambulance," I said. "You need to give me the tape. The station has copies. Then we go there next." My body chose before my mind did. I threw the detached alarm handle at the window. The glass cracked but did not break. He lunged. I moved into the kitchen. The narrow space gave me one advantage. He could not pass the table without turning sideways. I grabbed the reel from my bag and held it over the gas burner. He stopped. "You won't burn it. You don't know me. I know exactly what you do. You wait, you document. You make certain." He rolled the nut again. "You don't act until the danger has already chosen for you." He was right. That was the worst part. I had waited for proof when Malcolm warned me. Waited for proof when Elias lied. Waited for proof while the gray van followed me. And now Elias was bleeding on the floor because I had insisted on solving the entire puzzle before asking for help. The technician stepped closer. "You are still calculating." I turned the burner knob. Gas hissed into the room. His eyes moved toward the stove. I had no lighter, he knew it. Then I pressed the reel against the burner's electric igniter. A blue spark snapped. The gas caught with a hollow thump. The tape case began to melt. He rushed me. I dropped the reel into the flame. He grabbed my wrist. I drove my forehead into the thick lens of his glasses. The frame broke. He recoiled, one hand rising toward his eye. I pulled the metal kitchen table over between us and ran to Elias. The technician kicked the table aside. The fire climbed the plastic reel. Black smoke struck the ceiling. Elias's eyes opened. His hand moved weakly toward the radio cabinet. Not toward me, toward the scanner. I understood. The reel was never the only recording. I grabbed the scanner and pressed transmit. The display showed our station's backup frequency. The same 6 numbers Ruth had read in 1985. I spoke into the microphone. This is Nora Whitaker at 614 Darrow Street. Intruder in the second-floor apartment. Elias Grant injured. Transmission on auxiliary channel 6. The technician froze. Voices burst from the speaker. Not police dispatch, not emergency services, men using call signs. One said, "Shut it down." Another answered, "Signal is already mirrored." The technician looked at the burning reel, then at the scanner. He understood before I did. Elias had modified it to rebroadcast onto WPRK's live studio feed. At that exact moment, my station was airing dead music through an automated overnight block, but every microphone routed through engineering remained connected. Our confrontation was going out over the station, not only on the hidden frequency, on the public airwaves. The technician ran. He reached the hall just as fire crews came up the stairs. A neighbor had seen smoke through the cracked window and called emergency services. The technician shoved past the first firefighter. He made it to the street. He did not make it farther. The gray utility van was waiting at the curb. Malcolm Reed sat behind the wheel. For 1 second, I thought Malcolm had come to help him escape. Then Malcolm locked the doors. The technician pulled the handle. Malcolm stared straight ahead. Police arrived less than 2 minutes later. The recording broadcast from Elias's scanner did what Ruth had tried to do in 1985. It forced the secret channel into public view. The technician was named Victor Say. He had worked for the county communications department for 27 years. His father had supervised the illegal surveillance unit. Victor had inherited more than a job. He had inherited the responsibility of protecting everyone named in Ruth's copied ledger. Malcolm had preserved the reel because guilt would not let him erase it, but fear had kept him from releasing it. He sent the box anonymously when he learned Victor planned to dismantle the remaining equipment before the license hearing. Malcolm believed I would recognize Ruth's name and investigate. He also believed he could frighten me into stopping if I got too close. He misjudged both parts. Elias survived. Victor was charged with attempted murder, evidence tampering, and conspiracy. The old investigation reopened. Excavation crews searched the former communications annex. They found Ruth Calder beneath a sealed section of concrete floor. Beside her was a pocket notebook wrapped in wax paper. The pages contained badge numbers, dates, and one sentence written in Ruth's hand. "If the radio works, someone honest may hear me." Months later, I listened to the restored reel one final time. Audio specialists confirmed that Ruth had not said my name. The word had been distorted by overlapping static. She had said, no one, please don't let them erase this." My mind had supplied my own name because I was listening alone after midnight, already searching for a connection. But the frequency was real. The hidden network was real. The murder was real, and the station's future channel had not anticipated anything. The truth was simpler. In 2000, when WPRK applied for a new backup frequency, Malcolm chose one he already knew would be quiet. A channel he had monitored 15 years earlier. A channel the public believed had never been used. He had carried Ruth's voice forward without admitting it. Every night I had worked at that station, her final transmission had been sitting beneath ours. Silent, waiting, not for the future, for someone to finally listen.